Radio Mano Papachango.
I'm coming to you from Tucson, Arizona. I'm sitting in the parking lot of a Trader Joe's. I'm recording this in the van. Then I'm going to go into a cafe, upload it to my computer, throw it together in my Hindenburg podcast software, and upload it. And you'll be hearing this, some of you, within a few minutes. Amazing. The modern world. This episode is one of those that fell from the sky. The guy's name is Justin, and I can't remember how to pronounce his last name, but we'll get right into it. And if you're looking at the landing page, you see his picture and his name. He's Outlaw YOGI on Instagram. He's interesting cat, very interesting cat, as you'll hear. The way it came together was we were up at Crestone visiting a buddy of ours, also named Justin, and we decided to go to the hot springs at Joyful Journeys. By the way, if you ever go through the San Luis Valley, check out Joyful Journeys. It's pretty cool. Natural hot springs. So we went there and we got into one of the pools. There was a dude sitting there and started chatting with him. Covered with tats, ponytail, interesting looking guy. And he was very chill, very cool guy. And so he said, hey, why don't you come over for dinner a couple days? And he did. And turned out the guy's really got a lot going on. Holy shit. And I also appreciated the fact that he didn't lay any of that out in the hot tub. In the the hot springs. In the hot springs, we were just talking about this and that and traveling and his van and his grandma, who he decked out the van with his grandma. But he didn't say, he didn't advertise himself. He just was sort of chatting. And it was only at dinner, when we'd had some wine, that he started telling some stories, and holy shit, wow. So we agreed to do a podcast, and so that I could share some of those stories. We could share some of those stories with you guys. This one starts off at hemorrhoids, and it just takes off from there. So it's probably not an episode for the squeamish or the faint of heart, but I don't really think anyone listening to this podcast is squeamish or the least bit faint of heart. Latest news from me. Just booked a flight to Thailand. Kind of a hassle, for sure. Lots of hoops to jump through. But I think that we're talking about going to Asia anyway, as I mentioned in the last episode. And now there's this new variant racing around the world. And I think a good place to be is a tropical island where everything is done outside, ventilation is everywhere, and Thai food is the standard. To me, that's where I want to be. And if I get stuck there, so be it. So that's where we're headed. We're going to go to Thailand in a week or so, and then we will play it by ear from there. But that's the plan at the moment. Who knows? Maybe all international travel will be shut down in the next 48 hours. Who the fuck knows? What a crazy, tumultuous time it is. Thank you for listening to this episode, as always, and thank you for supporting the podcast, however you do it. Just a reminder, if you buy stuff on Amazon, a great way to support this podcast at no extra cost to you is to use my Amazon affiliate link that you'll find on my website, thatchrisryan.com. And just bookmark it and use that every time you go to Amazon, and a couple % of whatever you spend kicks back to support the podcast. Thank you for that, and any other ways that you support the podcast, whether it's leaving reviews on iTunes or your podcast app, or joining the tribe officially, financially, by signing up, subscribing at my website. You get free copies of the ebooks if you want them. There are 3 of them at this point. One talking about sex, one talking about drugs, and one just talking about whatever the fuck we came up with, called Tangentially Reading. And you get those for free if you're a member. And also semi-monthly video romas, where if people ask questions, I answer them in a video roma, or at least entertain them and discuss them. And those are fun to do. We didn't get any questions, I think, in 1 month, so we skipped it. But I saw a few more came in recently, so I'll be doing one of those shortly. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for your attention and your time and your love. Sending it all right back at you. I'll be in touch soon, maybe from Thailand. Bye. I'm in the cafe now. I'm going to play you out. No, I'm going to play you in with a song called Desert Land by Elena B. Williams, because I've been walking in these desert lands of Utah, New Mexico, and Arizona these last few weeks, and it's been fucking awesome. And then at the end of the podcast, I'm going to play you out with one of Carsey Blanton's new songs. We're going to skip Smoke Alarm this time, and we're going to play Party at the End of the World, because that's the party we're at, folks. Get on down. All right, we're going live. All I know about this guy for sure is his name's Justin. I don't even know that for sure. Although you did give me a book and your name was on the book, so I guess that would be an elaborate long play.
It would be an elaborate ruse, yeah.
Yeah, so we met in a hot springs.
Hot springs.
2 days ago. This is my favorite thing in the podcast, to just meet people randomly and like find these diamonds in the rough. Is that the way to describe you?
That's a very kind way to describe me. Thank you.
A very, very rough diamond. Yeah.
Unfaceted.
Very faceted.
Opaque. But less brilliant than you find in a store.
Yeah, for sure. Anyway, welcome, Justin. I don't know how to pronounce your last name.
KALISZEWSKI.
KALISZEWSKI. All right. Former Mr. Colorado basketball champ. I found out. So this is a funny podcast because it's the morning after podcast. We thought we were going to do this yesterday. We were meeting for dinner and drinks last night, and we were like, okay. I said, let's get together before dinner and do a podcast, and you in your head agreed to it, but we got the timing mixed up, so you showed up and we're already into the wine and the weed, and it was too late. So now I do know something about you, so that'll work to our advantage, I think. I know, for example, that you recently had hemorrhoids. You wanted to talk about that?
In true tangential fashion,
yeah,
we're going to have the podcast the next day.
Yeah.
And right before we hit record, I had to go in and wipe my ass one more time.
One more time?
Well, because have you had hemorrhoids?
I don't think so.
That's good. You would know. It'd either be painful or bloody, or both.
Yeah.
And I recently said I've had this gnarly hemorrhoid for at least 10 years.
10 years?
Once a week I'll bleed while I poop. And it's when you put even a drop of water or a drop of blood in the water, it spreads out. It looks like a massacre.
Attracts sharks, too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's bad news.
Ass sharks.
Yeah, ass sharks. And for 10 years I've had this hemorrhoid. 3 of them, I guess, it turns out. I finally went and got it checked out. I didn't have insurance for a long time, so I waited, and I went and got it checked out.
And that's an embarrassing doctor situation.
Okay, it's especially embarrassing when the heavily accented Turkish man walks in, and he's got a young 20s blonde medical student with him.
Oh.
And he says, "You don't mind I have the student with me?"
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, fuck it. Why not? Let's do this.
In for a penny, in for a pound.
In for a pound.
Yeah.
And you can't just go in and do one procedure. You have to have a procedure per hemorrhoid. And so I had a check-in appointment. We did a colonoscopy just to be safe, because he said the amount of blood I was seeing in my stool
could have been some kind of cancer,
any number of
serious,
things.
right.
So the colonoscopy comes out clean as a whistle, and then they scheduled a hemorrhoid banding, and they take a little rubber band and they occlude the tissue so that it becomes necrotic and it drops off on its own.
You can do that with moles too. I've done that with moles on my skin.
Just yourself?
Yeah.
Oh shit.
Yeah, I looked it up online when I was a kid. Actually, I had a mole on my neck that bothered me. It was kind of like protruded a bit, and no, I couldn't have been online because there was no online when I was a kid. Anyway, I found somewhere some medical source of information said that's what doctors did. They would just cut off the blood to it and it fell off. So I took some dental floss and I looped it and put it over the mole and pulled it tight, and I walked around for a few days with a dental floss knot on my neck, and then it fell off.
When we're done with this, I got 2 more hemorrhoids I want you to look at.
I'm not that kind of doctor.
But they can only do one at a time. They can't just... I thought we'd go in, we'd clear out the hemorrhoids. No, you got to do one appointment, and it's not just an office visit. You got to gown up. They take you in a procedure room. They put a rubber band around your head, and you should see the grimace on Mr. Christopher Ryan's face right now. Yeah. We had a few stories last night. I whipped out my kidney stone story. Kidney stone.
Yeah, I don't think I've told that on the podcast. We're going to save that. That'll be a special episode.
A special edition.
So for people who are listening to this going, what the fuck?
Just tuning in.
I don't want to listen to this guy's ass story for an hour.
Not all at
No, we'll move on to other scintillating material.
But anyways, I try to take it easy when I wipe.
Right.
And sometimes it leaves a little residue.
Wet wipes are where it's at. Yeah. Got to go with the wet wipes. I had a funny experience with urologist, because I had I'm sick, almost 60. And so this is like a few years ago. So I was well into my 50s, and it's like, fuck, they always say you got to get your prostate tested. And so like, all right, fuck it. And I went into LA and to have my prostate exam, and I go into the office, and the guy comes in and he says, Chris Ryan. I said, yeah. He said, I hope you don't mind. I scheduled you for a double appointment. So we're here for 40 minutes rather than 20. And I was like, uh-oh. Because they'd done tests, and he had the tests, and I was like blood tests and shit. I was like, oh, fuck, uh-oh, what's going on here? I said, is there a problem? He said, no, it's just I read Sex of Dawn, and I wanted to chat with you about it. I was like, oh, great, so we're buddies.
All right.
And so I'm sitting there on the exam table, and he's in his chair, and we're talking, and it's fascinating. We're talking about his work, and he does brisses, and he does all this dick stuff. And I'm trying to get him to be on the podcast because, why not? Awesome. But he doesn't want to because he's afraid he'll get in trouble with his employer. Anyway, we're having this great conversation, and after 20, 25 minutes, he says, by the way, I know you're being particularly interesting to delay the moment when I put my finger up your ass. It's like, you're right. I'm just trying to talk my way out of this.
Have we not run out of time yet, Doctor?
Yeah. But wait, I got another story for you.
Easiest way to control the room. Walk in, start talking,
I was
and don't
talking
stop.
for my life. Yeah. Anyway, so let's move on from the butt stuff.
Let's move on from the butt stuff.
So we meet the other day in the Joyful Journeys. You were in the midst of a joyful journey.
It's not every day you meet a man semi-naked in the hot springs, hit it off, and it doesn't go super weird, right, and it goes normal, and we end up having dinner. So far.
Some people listening to this would say it's already gone weird, guys. You just don't notice. We notice
because you're weird.
Yeah. That's what we like.
Weird is normal to us.
Weird is good. Yeah. Normal is a cult.
Normal is weird.
Yeah. Normal's fucking weird as shit. But people don't notice that. But The people listening to this podcast are weird.
Yeah.
So we're in good
good.
company here. I mean, otherwise they would have been gone a long time ago.
Thanks for listening, you weirdos.
Fucking weirdos.
We'll close with butt stuff too. You'll love it. Stick around.
Stick around. Yeah, what's that? A callback.
We'll bookend it.
Well, yeah, we'll
with
bring
butt
it,
stuff.
bringing it back around.
Yeah.
All right, so your checkered past. How old are you?
41.
41. And you've lived so many fucking lives based on what I heard you talking about last night. You were serious athlete in basketball.
Serious All-American basketball player. I forget about that. 48-inch vertical leap, one dunk contest.
And you're what?
5'9".
5'9".
Well, when I talk about dunking, I'm 5'9". If I talk about just being normal, I'm 6 foot.
Oh, okay. Because you just have 6 foot energy.
Yeah.
Yeah. BBE, big body energy.
Big body energy.
So you've got this whole basketball thing going on, but you're getting in fights a lot.
And I was getting in fights on the court, and that got me into fighting. I became a cage fighter for several years. Worked overseas in the development sector for better part of 10 years, mostly in conflict zones, Kathmandu, Nepal, and East Timor during their conflicts.
So let's go through these more or less chronologically. So you grew up in Colorado?
I was born in Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Okay.
The day a tornado ripped through downtown, I was born.
Uh-huh.
And then, that
was the beginning.
That was the
auspicious.
omen. Here
Right.
comes this guy.
Right.
Maybe.
We have a friend named Autumn Storm.
Mm-hmm.
That's her real name.
That's a neat name.
It's a great name, isn't it? She's not a porn star.
Don't want to say she should be. But
with that name.
A name like that.
What got you into porn?
She'd go
Well,
gangbusters.
my name.
I was born for it.
she'll come up with a fake name, like Mary Jane or some shit.
See, and I think that's why my mom she wanted to name me Slade. And my dad's name was Sawyer, so I'd have been Slade Sawyer.
Right.
But what kind of fucking rascal would I have been if I was named? I'm named Justin, and I'm a rascal. But Slade Sawyer, you're born into a biker gang.
Yeah.
With a name.
Yeah,
like
you
that.
get an honorary membership.
You get a
You
patch.
just skip the initiation.
Born with the tattoos.
Right.
Everything. Cigarette in your mouth.
Little.
So she named me Justin.
Dangerous
instead.
birthing procedure. All right, so your name Justin. Trees are falling down the day you're born.
Born in Kalamazoo to, born of a makeup sex. My father told me, and sometimes it's distasteful for your dad to talk to you about sexual relationship with your mother. But he told me I was makeup sex. They got divorced 3 to 6 months later. She was very young, 21. She took up with a rock and roller, Ken KALISZEWSKI, and against a court order, they moved to Orange County, California.
Against the court order.
My dad was a drug dealer at the time. And they knew that because he wasn't paying child support if they took me, he wasn't going to go to the authorities.
Yeah, right.
And so they moved me to Orange County. I ended up growing up in a Vietnamese gang instead of a Kalamazoo biker gang.
Instead of redneck white supremacists. Do you have siblings?
I have 3 half siblings. So we lived in Orange County for maybe 13 years, and then we moved right as I was really getting into trouble. We moved to Colorado.
Is that why you moved?
Ostensibly.
How old were you then?
13. It was like the end of 6th grade, beginning of 7th grade.
And what kind of trouble were you getting into?
Gangs.
Really? It's actual street gang?
Yeah, we had a gang at school, and they brought, Jesus, I'll never forget, they brought the LAPD head of the gang squad in. Guy was 6'8", he could have been 8 feet tall, right? 300-pound, dark as night, black guy, and he lined our whole gang up. And our gang's leader was Chris Valdez. It's like 16-year-old kid in 6th grade, right? He's been held back 3-4 times. He'd steal Game Boys. He'd bring a bag of Game Boys, and you'd trade him your G.I. Joes. This is our little world. Mm-hmm. And this guy lines us all up and gets in our face, real drill sergeant style. And he's like, "You think you're in a fucking gang? Wait till you get here, and then what they ask you to do." And I was like, "You're right. I'm not in a fucking gang. I'm not for this life." Mm. And shortly thereafter, my parents moved us to Colorado. My little brother, my half brother, was born 10 years after me, so we have 10 years separating us. And he was very young, and they thought, hey, let's move to Colorado a fresh start. We were also one of the only families in Southern California in the 80s that didn't buy a home. So we kind of missed out on
prices
on that. And so we moved to Colorado, and I remember they bought their first home for $90,000, I think.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of a new start for the whole family. I went to junior high school here, and then I played Division I basketball at Southern Utah
And last
University.
night you said you were real clean cut at some point. But then there was also a ponytail incident. Where was the clean cut part?
Well, coming from California, I had this bleached from the sun, blonde hair. It was down to my shoulders, let's say. And
Were you a surfer? Was that you in that?
I'd
thing?
never surfed, but I'd bodyboarded and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
My mom, I think, so she didn't have to watch me too close at the beach, instilled in me a terror of the ocean.
Oh, nice.
So I never got to surf.
Took you to see Jaws a few times?
Something,
Yeah.
Undertow. The undertow is legendary in her stories.
Yeah.
If you put your foot in the water without
It'll suck you
supervision,
in. You're a goner.
Pulls in 1,000 kids a day, kind of stories.
I grew up terrified of quicksand.
I'm still terrified of quicksand.
Never seen it in real life, but man, as a kid, it was everywhere.
Quicksand, parasites, kidney stones.
Oh,
I got a few bugaboos that
those will
I don't
get
want
you.
to fuck with.
Yeah. All right, so you moved to Colorado. So you were telling me when you were clean cut.
We moved to Colorado, and our insurance agent, Dan Purcell, coached a basketball team, mostly because his son played, Aaron.
Right.
And they're like, hey, we need this kid to be active, And so they put me on the basketball team. I never played. And I just kind of took to it, Fast forward a year, and I'm going into ninth grade. And I walked in to try out, and the JV coach walks in and goes, hey, ponytails, kid's got to go. Cut him. Merle Wickland. Never forget.
Right.
And Merle cuts me, but, it kind of tell you can't do something, and you push back. So
Were you already good at this point? You'd only been playing for a year.
I was very athletic.
Right. So you just had the raw skills.
I've always been very kinesthetically gifted. So if you teach me something, whether it's dancing or jiu-jitsu or basketball, if you teach me something one time, I can lock away the technique. I can practice it 1,000 times. I can teach it.
Right.
Very just a gift.
Right. That is a gift.
So at this point, I have a lot of hustle. I have a lot of natural ability. And, at the freshman level, 5'9" is almost a power forward, right? So I have good
you're
size.
already 5'9".
Yeah, I kind of shot up to there by 6th grade and then stopped growing.
Right.
My feet were huge, and we thought I was going to be 6'5", some shit. I thought I'd be in the NBA and stuff. Kind of took it for granted that I would play pro ball, and that would be it.
Right.
I quit playing baseball at that time to focus on basketball, which I kind of kicked myself because even though I didn't love the sport, I probably would have played pro baseball. But,
Yeah, you can't. How tall are your parents?
About my height,
Right.
5'10", 5'11".
Yeah, and if your dad was like 6'6", then you have a better bet on that. Yeah. So you cut off the ponytail so you could play basketball.
Cut the hair, came back, made the team the next year. 3 years later, I'm Mr. Colorado Basketball Player of the Year.
Player of the Year. So that's a all-state thing? I was
all-state.
the most valuable player in the state?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, 9 News.
And that's high school basketball.
Gave me a paperweight and everything.
Paperweight. Wow. Good for you, man.
For all my papers.
I only have one trophy. And people listening to this are like, oh, shit, he's going to tell this story again. The only trophy I have is for, it's an AVN award. It's the Oscar of porn.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy, and it's a nice trophy too. It's a big gold,
tall, and
looking thing.
Long.
It's a man and a woman naked embracing. It's beautiful. It's actually a beautiful sculpture. But I won that. I was in a porn movie as myself, and it was sort of built into the plot that the one of the characters is a documentary filmmaker, and she interviews people who've written books about sex. So she interviews me. I play myself. And then she and I have this conversation in the kitchen because she's going through relationship issues and all this. And I won the fucking AVN.
And then you have sex with her?
No, I never had sex with her. No,
because we're in the kitchen right now, and I thought maybe you were segueing us into where this podcast goes.
That would be awkward. Never done that on the podcast. But I won. My category was best non-sex performance.
No way.
Like winning a porn award for best non-sex performance. It's like the slowest guy in the race who made it somehow over the finish line. It's some sort of a loser or winner situation.
It's like the sportsmanship trophy of porn.
Exactly. Good sportsmanship.
You didn't get to come, but you showed up.
Yeah.
You played your part.
You read your lines. And,
well done.
Yeah, good enough.
That's
right.
neat.
Yeah.
Do you keep that in the van?
No, it's in storage right now. We did when we rented a house. We had it, on the altar. Yeah, it's a sacred object. Anyway, enough about me. Let's talk about, what do you think about me?
Enough about porn.
So you're all Mr. Colorado. You're still Mr. Colorado, as far as I'm concerned.
That's very kind.
Yeah, yeah. And you went to college?
I wouldn't have went to college if it wasn't for athletics.
Right.
And, thankfully I did and had a nice experience, and my 4-year degree was free because of that. But,
Where'd you go?
Well, I went to Southern Utah University first. I had these epic high school coaches, just great human beings.
Right.
And so I was under the misconception that coaches across the board were great people.
Right.
And at the college level, they're great salesmen.
Huh.
And so I go to Southern Utah University. I did not enjoy the experience. High-level Division I. At one point, I led.
Oh, it's Division I?
Yeah.
Oh.
At one point, I was top 5 in the country in three-point field goal percentage. We played at the Great Alaska Shootout. Like, we had a pretty big year for
Right.
a mid-major school. But I wasn't happy going from averaging 25 points a game to I only started half the games as a freshman. You're fucking 18. You don't know what you're thinking. And so I transferred to the School of Mines.
Oh, right.
School of Mines gave me the biggest athletic scholarship in the history of their school.
Huh.
To get me to come there.
Right.
Tiny school, tiny gym. I thought, man, if I just go play at a tiny school, I'm going to get the same kind of personal attention, so to speak, that I got from in high school.
Right.
Come to find out, the RMAC, Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference, they have a requirement that coaches have to have psychology degrees. And if you know anyone with a psychology degree,
I do.
they're fucked up.
Yeah, that's me. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You go to figure out your own shit.
doctorate. That's how fucked up I am.
Right. So coach would fuck with us. He'd call a 5 a.m. practice just to see who would show up.
What?
And then come back at 4 and walk out. You'd be like, what the fuck?
Oh, that's bullshit, man.
Complete bullshit.
Yeah.
And so I transferred again. I transferred to the University of Northern Colorado. Come to find out that coach, Craig Rasmussen, he got a karmic, what is it where you have to shit in a bag?
Oh, colostomy bag.
He had a colostomy bag years later. This guy was a piece of work. He was a used car salesman before he got the job. He was head basketball coach at the University of Northern Colorado. And so that went the way it went. And by the time I get done with this college athletic experience, I'm just a pissed off young man.
Right. And
Really
also, you're not growing the way you were expecting.
No.
Right. You were thinking you'd be 6'2" by the time you got out of college.
Or growing mentally the way you would hope.
Right.
Because I was very talented. So, I don't want to point the finger at the School of Mines, but I got a grade in organic chemistry that I did not earn.
Right.
Right,
because they wanted to keep you on the team.
Keep you eligible.
Yeah.
So I loved English. I loved poli-sci. Loved to read and write. I squeaked out an English degree.
Right.
And at that point, I'm just kind of tired of life. A buddy of mine had moved to Taipei. He goes, come out here. So I went back in the day to a travel agent. I wrote a paper check for a one-way ticket to Taipei.
Right.
I took a night class at Arapahoe Community College in Chinese, 5 sessions on Thursday night. Show up figuring I'm going to eat Taipei for breakfast.
I'm halfway fluent.
I can still order 8 dumplings.
Oh, nice. That's what you need.
Wo yao ba ga bao zi.
That's important.
But if they tell me how much it is, I'm just going to give them my biggest bill and hope for the change to
or
come
ask
back.
you like what you want in them. Duck dumplings or chicken dumplings?
I got so culture shocked. The first night there, I was my body was sick. And by the time I can get out of bed, I drag my ass down and we get some really good duck. at this place by my buddy's apartment, and we're sitting there, and I'm just trying to eat this duck with chopsticks, and this wonderful Taiwanese lady brings me a spoon. Here you go. I'm like, oh, thank you.
Yeah.
You're an angel. And I stayed in Taiwan for a couple months. I taught English as a second language after school to kindergarten through 8th grade.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
I've done that.
What a terrifying
Yeah.
experience.
Room full of kids.
Kindergarten.
It's like swimming with piranha or something.
Staring right into your soul.
Yeah.
And you can only say, hi, how are you? Good, how are you? So many times in an hour before you're like, well, what the fuck do we do now?
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely, it's like being on stage for sure. You got to entertain them, and you got to maintain this kind of mental space where, I don't know what Taiwanese kids are like, but Spanish kids, if they're not a little scared of you, they're going to stage a rebellion, and then you're in big trouble.
Yeah.
So there's got to be like some father energy, like you do not fuck with me because you don't want to know what's going to happen, which is nothing, of course, but there's a
The
big
implication.
bluff going on.
Yeah.
I'm a big man and I could get angry and dangerous. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, instead I quit.
Yeah, I did too eventually. I'm not good at being a big angry man.
I met a French woman on Koh Phi Phi Island
Go PP, been there. Yeah.
who says, Justin, you simply must go to
Justin.
Nepal.
Oh, nice.
And when someone looks in your eyes and says, Justin, you just say yes after that. And so I ended up in Nepal, and come to find out years later, the volunteer racket, where you charge a volunteer for a homestay, is really just about collecting money. Well, I lucked out, and I have the most beautiful Nepali family still to this day.
Oh, beautiful.
They call me Jagat, Earth,
Yeah.
right?
Nice.
And I
Is
taught
that in
it.
Kathmandu or in Pokhara?
Yep. They're if you know Kathmandu, they're near Mepi Temple,
That's the monkey temple?
Mepi. No, Swayambhu is the monkey temple. So Swayambhu is up here on the hill, and you come down, and then the Vishnu Madi River is right there. If you cross the river and follow the dirt path, you get to my family's house about 4 miles away.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I hope to be in Nepal in a few months.
What's that?
I hope to be in Nepal in a few months.
What for?
Just to go back there, in March, do some trekking, Annapurna Sanctuary.
Cool.
I was there 30 years ago or more.
Did you do that trek?
I didn't. I intended to, but I cut my foot really badly the first night in Kathmandu. I went up on the roof of the guest house to watch the sunset, and I stepped on something, some shard of something, and cut the ball of my foot, in here, the meat, really deep. And I went to a doctor, and he sewed it up, and he said, no trekking for you. You get an infection, you'll lose your foot.
Be screwed, yeah.
Yeah. So I ended up spending probably 2 months in Nepal, in Pokhara.
Yeah.
And that's where I met Captain Dan and Shaku I told you about last night. And I did an episode about them on this podcast, so people can go back and listen to that in the archives if you want. But I ended up just hanging in Pokhara for another 6 weeks or something.
Worse places to hang than Pokhara.
Especially in 1987, 8, somewhere in there. It was beautiful. Go out on the lake, and I have some really great memories. I learned to juggle there.
First time I ever had strawberry rhubarb pie was in Pokhara.
Yeah.
And I asked what was for dessert, and the guy said, strawberry rhubarb pie, sir. And I said, is it good? Oh, it's very nice. Very, very nice.
Yeah.
So I'll try
And it
that.
is.
Yeah.
I remember really good food in Nepal.
Yeah.
A lot of German, like schnitzel and all that shit, which I guess is because there's this history of Germanic people going there to climb the mountains. The early mountaineers were a lot of Germans.
Okay.
And British. So there's also like tea time and, all that influence from India, of course. But yeah, and isn't there like a pie alley in Kathmandu where like all these different pie shops?
I'm not aware of a pie alley, but it's making me want to go back in March.
Yeah. Anyway, so you're in Nepal, you're volunteering, you get a degree in English.
I have a degree in English, and I'm volunteering at this mud wall school. And they tell me, after a month or so of teaching English again, that they're going to have to close the school because their budget is going away.
Oh.
And I say, okay, what's What's your budget? Oh, it's a lot, sir. It's too much. And I finally get the number out, and it's like $2,300. I go, well, I'm pretty sure I can come up with that.
That's for a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I fly back to the States. I form a 501c3 nonprofit called Educate, EDGE. Education, taking education to the edge. It's clever, right?
Educate. Nice. I like that.
And I had a friend who was a principal at an elementary school. I dated her daughter in high school. Yeah, we're still friends. And I went to her school and I said, hey, how about we get these kids involved, partnered in a way with their counterparts in Nepal.
Right.
We raise a little money and we fund the school for a year.
That's great.
She goes, that's a great idea. I love it. We did an assembly and everything. And we raised enough money to move them out of this mud wall school into this beautiful new building with a playground and all this and that. And we expanded to include 2 additional grades. We expanded to include lunch and things like that. And at this point, it's like, well, maybe there's something there. Let's look, what other projects can we do? And so I started looking at a project in Indonesia. And at the time, I started going to grad school at the University of Denver. And that's where a professor of mine, Peter Van Arsdale, who is an Olympic caliber speed walker. Well,
goofiest
he
sport
talked
ever.
just like this.
Oh, like he walked.
Justin, I think there may be some projects for our students out in East Timor.
Nice.
And I had remembered East Timor from hot spots in the world back in
By the
day.
way, I just want to interject here. Speed walking is like winning the porn award for best non-sex performance.
It's very similar.
Yeah.
Trophy's smaller. They give you a certificate for speed walking.
I'm a really fast walker.
You wouldn't believe how fast I
Oh,
walk.
man. Well, that's good because I'm a slow runner. Anyway, sorry to interrupt you. So he's a good guy, apparently.
PVA's a great guy. He sends me to Timor because he's friends with Jose Ramos Horta,
Oh, the
Nobel
dude.
Peace Prize
Yeah.
winner, who at the time is the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Right. So tell people a little bit about East Timor. Because it was in the news, 15 years ago? It was a big
Plus
deal?
25 years ago.
that long, yeah.
I believe it was 1999 that the UN independence referendum was held.
Right.
I think it was 99.
And it was a Portuguese colony previously?
It was, yeah, which makes for really interesting genetics.
Right. Because the rest of Indonesia is Dutch.
Dutch.
Yeah.
East Timor is half of an island the size of Connecticut and an enclave, a little scoop out of the other half. And they were Portuguese. So they have 4 official languages: Portuguese, Bahasa Indonesian, Tetun, which is the Timorese language, and English. 4 official languages. They hold a referendum in 99. The Indonesian had occupied them in the time of Kissinger. They sent some paramilitary over to foment some unrest.
Right.
And they said, look, we're going to go in as a peacekeeping mission to occupy this country. All because they have the world's largest untapped oil and natural gas resources.
Oh, no.
Just offshore.
Kiss of death right there.
Kiss of death. So Indonesia takes over. The statistics are just the worst genocide statistically in the history of what we know of mankind. 1 in 3 people are disappeared, tortured, raped, right? In a population of 1 million people
Yeah.
at the time, it means everyone is traumatized.
Everyone's fucked up. Yeah.
So they vote overwhelmingly for independence, and it goes through, and all the Indonesians do in response is destroy the place when they take off. They pulled copper wire out of the houses. They pulled toilets out of the ground. So the place is rubble for years. And it's in turmoil. So when I'm out in that area, I ended up in Tibet. I went overland from Kathmandu to Tibet for a week. I had a friend who knew the Dalai Lama. So I was taking a home video for the Lama as I'm motoring through Tibet so he can see his home country, the palace, everything. But I don't speak great Chinese, and I didn't get any news. So while I'm in Tibet, the military opens fire on the police in East Timor, and I don't know it. I fly from Bali to Dili, which is 2 ways you can get there at the
So
time.
you fly from From Kathmandu to Bali.
Tibet, back from Lhasa back to Kathmandu.
From Lhasa. Okay.
Kathmandu to Bali, and then from Bali it's a 30-minute flight to a substandard length runway in East Timor. And when I walk out the front door of the airport, it's to an IDP camp, internally displaced people's camp. Massive. Tanks on the ground.
Right.
And I'm like, what the fuck is this? I thought I was coming out to check out opportunities for our students.
And this is your first time there?
This is my very first time to East Timor. I went with a Bali budget. I took $300 cash to East Timor.
And it's not a Bali economy?
Well, when the UN comes in, it becomes a UN economy. Because they're paying locals danger pay a day.
Right.
It, at the time, had the same designation as Iraq from a danger perspective. So their daily danger pay was going to be $35,000 a year on top of their salary and shit like that. So I think I'm going to get a room for $3 and a meal for $1 3 times a day. I ended up going to the embassy 3 days in. I'm like, hey, I need some money. I hear you guys will give money if someone's broke and you need to get home. And I'm sure I was talking to a CIA agent. She goes, well, we don't really like to do that. She goes, is there anyone you can call? I go, if you let me use your phone, because I don't have money for a phone even. We slept under a boat. We slept in a mosque, an orphanage of a mosque. We conned the Catholics and Bao Cow out of a night in their orphanage. I mean, we were doing what we could, me and my buddy Tate Robinson, to do a 30-day assessment to see what we could do with the university. But we ran out of money so fast. And so this lady gives me her phone. I call my Uncle Kenny. I remembered his number. At the time, it was 602-999-1115. It's like something out of a movie.
Yeah.
Like, Uncle, man, I'm fucked out here. I need $1,000 yesterday. And he sent me the money. My only contact in the country is Jose, who, when the turmoil happens, they put Marie Alcatiri, who's then the prime minister, under house arrest because he was fomenting this battle between the cops and the military. The military ended up killing dozens of cops in the streets. And Jose becomes the prime minister. So I show up.
So you're at the embassy asking for money and your only local contact is the prime minister?
Only person I know in the country is the fucking prime minister.
Nice.
Only I can't get a hold of him because I don't have a phone. And I can't walk into his office and I don't have a suit.
Sure.
Right?
Right.
And so I'm sitting there just taking stock of the country. Finally, I get a meeting with Jose at the end of 30 days. We scraped
And wait,
by.
how do you know him? What's your connection?
PVA. Had met him
Oh.
at a conference or something.
Oh, so you had met Jose before?
No. Professor Van Arsdale
they
had.
met. Okay, right.
Well, go over there. I know the Minister of Foreign
I'll
Affairs.
give you a letter of introduction.
Yes, of course. And he did.
Yeah.
Right? And so we meet Jose. Lovely guy, big, gruff, sounding guy. And I grew up in Southern California in a gang. And so when I get to Timor, I'm like, holy shit. I was the first person to say, you guys have a gang problem, a big gang problem. And when I met with Jose, I said that. He said, well, how do you find my country? I go, it's great, but you got a youth gang problem, man. Oh, well, stay and do something about it. Really? Okay. So me and Tate go back to our hostel. We spend 24 hours putting together a $1 million proposal for 6 youth centers across Dili. Give kids something to do. If their arms are tired, they can't throw rocks. If their arms are tired, they can't wield a machete, kind of thing.
And if they're on a team, they don't need that gang identity as much.
Yeah.
It is a gang.
Yeah.
It's just
and
a
it
team.
was for security.
Yeah, sure.
They thought they were keeping their people safe, and to some extent they were.
Yeah.
They were also cooking dirty meth. I ended up being on Australian television as a youth gang expert because I knew how they were cooking meth. Yeah. And they go crazy. Kids that you knew by day would put this shit in their body and they'd attack you at night. And a kid put a machete to my throat that I knew, he wants to fight now or kill me because he's got this toxin in his system. And so we were in East Timor for the better part of 2 years doing youth centers. We built at the time the third world's only purposeful skate park. Built this massive skate park, beautiful youth center that's still open to
And you
this
got
day.
the funding from the UN? Or?
We got a promise from Jose, and then he put us into his political system. Hey, go to the Minister of Youth and Sports. We'll carve out some of his budget.
No, he didn't want to do that.
No one likes anything carved out of their budget, even if they're not using it, right? I was green, though. I never met a prime minister. I never worked at that level. I had his number two, Jose's number two, came up to me one time. I'd go from the job site to the prime minister's office or to his house. I'd have a backwards hat on. And he leans in, he goes, "Mind what you wear when you come here." I was like, these are the clothes I have. I've never done this before. I'm working with your kids, you know?
Yeah.
We did our best. We ended up getting funding from ConocoPhillips because we got shut down. Oh, next year we can allocate some funds, blah, blah, blah. Well, now we're still living on our own dime and we're doing the work because there's buildings everywhere, but they need refurbished,
Right.
you know? And so Jose loaned me his motorbike with a sidecar so I could get around. He had an old Soviet replica of a Harley, World War II Harley. And I'd put Tate in the sidecar. I'd put bags of cement on his lap and a shovel and a jug of water, and we'd go cruising down Main Street. The thing had 3 sirens. I'd flip the siren on, and the fighting would stop because the kids thought the prime minister was rolling down the street.
And they respected the prime minister?
And then they would stop and see me and just be confused enough that we could get through them.
Right.
And they'd start fighting again. But I mean, you're dodging rocks.
So they're fighting. These are all Timorese kids? This isn't kids from another culture?
No, this is Timorese
just because it had been so destabilized.
And it was so
up.
entrenched now in their systems to just be at conflict.
Yeah. Man, that's rough. So how long were you there?
Almost 2 years.
Huh.
And then what happened was really, it was kind of traumatic to me, although compared to how traumatic it was for Jose, is much more for him. My grandpa came out for a month. I took him around Timor. I was dating the head of the World Bank in Timor at the time, Steffi Stallmeister.
Steffi Stallmeister.
A lovely German girl. Me and Gramps stayed with Steffi. She even went out of town, so we had her beautiful...
Is this the same grandfather you went to Burning Man with?
This is the same one.
What's his name? Lowell or Noel?
His name's Newell.
Newell.
We call him Newt, or I call him Gramps.
Right.
He's got a little newt on his arm, tattooed from the Korean conflict, which is where my big newt comes from his tribute.
Right.
And so Gramps and I we've done 10,000 miles in Mexico.
Yeah.
We've been to Burning Man together. We've been to East Timor together. We spent months on Bali.
Yeah.
Months.
All right, don't let me derail you. So he comes out to visit.
Gramps and I are at dinner at Jose's house. Lovely time. Some friends are there. And the next day, Gramps flies out. I spend another month in the country. And I'm having one more dinner with Jose. The next day, I fly out. Jose goes for his morning walk along the beach like he always does, and everyone knows. Great guy. Any Timorese could show up at his house, ask for $100 and give it to him. Or to camp. He had refugees camped on his land. So he's very well known. His patterns are well known. Well, he comes back walking up his driveway, and where we said goodbye not 24 hours ago, he gets shot 3 times from a group trying to take power. And I was devastated.
Was he killed?
No.
Yeah.
He survived. But it just opened up this whole, who am I to be working in this place? Is it a welcome work?
Yeah.
That could have been me standing there at any given time. And it made me really look back at this country, at my own country, and at my own family. My little brother had grown up in this time. He was graduating from high school. And my family wasn't doing well financially. My mom had gotten a little overstretched. And so I moved back. My little brother moved in with me. I put him for a couple UN jobs that didn't go through. And so instead we started growing marijuana.
This is in Michigan?
Colorado.
In Colorado. Right.
And it was about maybe 5 years before cannabis became decriminalized and then made legal.
So allegedly you started growing marijuana.
I believe we're past the statute of limitations, so we can actually say that I did.
Okay.
Yeah. We grew legendary marijuana, though. I mean, just I would.
How did you know how to do that?
I brought a hippie in.
Hireahippie.com.
And here's the thing.
I've been that hippie. I've been consultant.
You want a hippie to tell you if your weed's good or not.
Yeah.
You don't want them to set up your grow room, though, looking back.
They're not real good at sterilization.
He sets he built a tray. I had a crawl space of a basement, and he built this elevated tray that was full of dirt. Couldn't handle the weight. And after the first round, we ended up going pots, and we learned a lot. Bought the medical.
You went hydroponic?
No, dirt.
Oh, okay.
I was like dirt. Hydro scared me. Plus, we weren't really set up for water and water reservoirs at our particular location.
Right.
But what we were set up to do is to cram thousands of plants into this little 4-bedroom house.
Right.
We had a seedling room.
How do you hide the electrical bill?
You don't.
You just
4-bedroom house, though, with only 2 dudes in it, is a pretty low load, so that when you add lights, it's like a normal family.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But we'd get helicopter flyovers. We were worried. Dude, we lived in the town of Morrison, right near Red Rocks, right downtown. So we'd have cops pulling people over for running the stop sign in our driveway. Multiple times.
Do you have filters for the exhaust?
No.
So you had
the
weed
one
smell
time,
blowing out the window.
The one time a cop knocked on our door, we were cooking Indian food.
Nice. And he knocked on your door because of the smell?
He knocked on the door because we had 2 front doors. It's this old 1-room cabin that got added on to. It's a really cool, neat house that's still there right next to the Morrison Inn Mexican restaurant. And my brother is a late night owl. He got home at 4 a.m. It's cold, so he's got his hoodie on. He tried to get in one front door, it didn't open. He walked around the corner, went in the other front door. Someone calls the cops and says someone's trying to get into houses.
Right.
They'd seen him. So this big meathead cop knocks on the door, and thank God my girlfriend at the time was cooking Indian food. And we had 2 massive American bulldogs. So the dogs are barking and the Indian food is flowing and saturating the air. And I was able to step outside the house and go, hey, what can I do for you? Oh, no, that was just my brother. Thanks for coming by, officer. Josh, damn glad to meet you.
Yeah.
Where the hell were we?
You came back, you were growing weed to help your mom. And you mentioned earlier when you were playing basketball, you were getting into a lot of fights, and I know that somehow leads into the UFC or the jiu-jitsu.
So right at this time, I get back, and there's some overlap in there, right? I played my last semi-pro basketball season during my last year of grad school, which I completed as I came back from Timor, and I'm getting in these fights on the court, in the locker room. And a buddy of mine, we're sitting in a lecture, he goes, just come to jiu-jitsu with me sometime. Right. And I was like, man, I'm not a wrestler. I don't know anything about that. He goes, just come. I walked in and saw the scariest man I'd ever seen. Mike Nichols was a UFC pro at the time, tattooed head to toe, 6'6", massive guy. He's a light heavyweight. And so he walked at 240 and fought at 205. And he jumped up and gave me the biggest smile, welcome, and I just felt at home.
Right.
And then the first time I rolled on the mat, I remember I got my ass kicked. And then when I got to the car, I couldn't lift my arms. Literally. I was like, how the fuck am I going to drive home?
Just from exhaustion?
From full body exertion.
Right.
The adrenaline. I mean, because this is, you're in a fight now. Right. Simulated, safe fight. And I got out there and I couldn't move my arms. And I was so spent that the anger was quiet.
Right.
And that's, I think, the greatest gift that fighting ever gave for me is I can go lay it on the line on the mat, and I would leave and drive home and someone would cut me off and I'd go, oh, hope you're okay.
Yeah.
And wish them well instead of just wanting to fight,
Yeah.
And then a girlfriend got me into yoga.
So you're doing yoga and jiu-jitsu at the same time?
And I showed up at teacher training with a Rocky Balboa black eye. And it was me and 35 girls at Core Power, Cherry Creek. And they looked at me like, oh my God. And I said, I told you, day one, I'm a cage fighter. That's what I do. I grow dope and I fight in the cage. and I write and I paint. And that's my life. And they're like, huh. And in that moment, this incongruency hit me with the peacefulness of that martial art. Yoga is a martial art. A lot of people don't realize that. It was developed during the time of the British occupation in India. Kind of like capoeira. So that you could train to fight, but not be seen training to fight. Oh no, sir, this our religion. It's Swedish gymnastics, partnered with Hindu mythology, and it was practiced specifically to be ready to fight the British.
Interesting.
Yogis would travel around and teach people yoga so they could be ready to fight.
So are there fighting techniques embedded in yoga, or is it just bodily preparation?
Just bodily preparation.
So you're flexible and quick and
it's
balanced. It's
not like the dance fight of capoeira, but just the sneakiness of it. Yeah, just be ready for when this revolution comes. Is where today's yoga, physical asana practice, they call it, originates from.
And we're talking about hatha yoga?
Yeah, hatha yoga.
Yeah.
Hatha yoga encompasses more practices too, but just the asanas that you go do in a studio, almost all those postures except for the sun salutation. The sun salutation comes from the pilgrim's pranam. They'll do 108 and then move one body length forward and do 108, and that's how they get from here to there, and that's their pilgrimage. Or they'll do it around a temple. They'll do the prostration, and that's the sun salutation. That's ancient. Everything else almost is Swedish.
Downward dog, that's a tough one to fight from.
It'd be a different kind of fight.
Yeah. Well, maybe you get a back kick out of it, maybe.
You would want to fight when you're being attacked from downward dog.
So you're doing, such an interesting balance of UFC fighting, yoga, painting, writing, growing weed. There's a lot of interesting sort of configurations there. When I step back and look at it, you can see a natural transition of marijuana came into my life at a time when my family needed money. I was an insomniac. I was full of anger, and I was in a lot of physical pain from fighting for 8 hours a day. And you hadn't smoked weed before that?
Never in my life till I grew it. First time I smoked weed.
Why didn't you smoke weed in high school? Everybody else
I was an athlete.
So you just didn't want to fuck with your body.
Dabbled a little bit in alcohol. In fact, I set the Swedish emergency room blood alcohol record at the time.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Had my stomach pumped. You ever had your stomach pumped?
No.
It's fucking awful. Stick a tube up your nose and then down your throat to get whatever alcohol is still in your system.
And you were in Sweden at the time?
Swedish hospital in Inglewood.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
A place I worked at later as an EMT.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So, but wait, I'm used to tangential, but you're really pushing it. So we're talking about, you were saying the weed came into your life when you really needed something to help you sleep.
First
and calm
marijuana
down.
I had ever smoked was I had pulled some plants. We gave our first haul to our roommate's uncle who was dying of cancer. We gave it all to him. It was White Widow and purple something. And it helped him sleep, made him feel better. And as we're pulling it, you get that residue on your fingers, and then you roll it into a little ball of finger hash. We rolled a aluminum foil pipe, put a little kink in it. The first weed I ever smoked was finger hash out of a foil pipe of my own grow in the basement. And then I slept like a baby. And I was like, well, there's something to this. And ever since, I've grown marijuana. It's one thing I've done most in my entire life now, 15 years or something like that, because it's a real gift to people, starting with myself. And I find, so I'm in yoga teacher training, I'm growing dope, I'm painting and writing at home. And what ends up happening is the fight starts going out of me.
Yeah.
I'm fighting with Colorado's #1 pro all day long.
How old are you at this point?
28.
Right. So
28 to 35.
You're growing up too.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that's happening. Yeah.
But I'm still juicing a little bit at this time. Diana Ball is a hell of a drug to give to someone who already has a very high testosterone level.
Right. What's that feel like? Could you feel it when you? Is it an injection or a pill, or how
I
do you
did
take it?
pill and injectable steroids. Yep. It's I never did enough to really feel like that. It's not like Popeye with a spinach.
Right.
Pour it down your throat and suddenly you're Superman. But it lets you work harder in the gym. So instead of putting on 300 pounds on the bench, maybe push 325. And then it helps you recover faster afterwards.
Right.
And at the level I was fighting, there's no testing. So I'm in there going toe-to-toe with Mike, meat headed out, and then he's fighting in the UFC.
Right.
So when I leave the mat, I've just fought the toughest guy in Colorado. And I had less and less to prove to that egoistic animal in the basement of my gut, so to speak. And my strikes started getting softer and softer. So Mike would say, hey, let's do little gloves, 40% sparring.
That's 40% strength.
Yeah, force.
That's interesting. So you modulate it that closely.
If you can.
Right.
Yeah. And if you can't, then you don't get to fight with the big guys. You need to go train more.
Right.
And so I'm fighting Mike and I'm punching him and he goes, Justin, I said 40%. I said, yeah. He goes, you're going 4%. You're going 4%.
Right.
And the fight was just kind of leaking out of me.
Right.
And then in that point in teacher training, I thought, I'm going to shift this more peaceful direction.
Right.
Yoga is a martial art that stops where the other person's nose starts.
Right.
And I fell way down the yoga rabbit hole, way down. I'd always been a student of religion, of spirituality, of different cultures in the world. And it all came together. And then at the time I was also doing stand-up, open mics and stuff like that. So the first yoga class I teach is 35 scantily clad people in a room that I lock. You don't get to talk or throw jabs back from the audience, and I can play music, tell jokes, and teach an impeccable workout because I come from that tradition. And it went big, and I went from 1 class to 10 classes a week. I'm still growing marijuana, and I have all this time to get into different kinds of trouble, but also to write and to start painting. And yoga really took me. I taught for a couple years at Core Power. I was still the #1 attended teacher ever in Denver at Core Power. Our classes would average 100 people. We'd burst the fire codes.
And why? What was it that you were doing?
I was authentic. I was stripping the dogma from the practice, and that's where Outlaw Yoga originated from. Because any practice will develop this.
Can I take your picture?
You may.
I always forget to do this. I mean, I could find one online, but I want to get the Outlaw Yoga. Yeah. All right.
But yoga, so I would walk into the yoga studio, and 99% of studios in the country, you walk in, there's a sign that says silence. Respect the silence in the yoga studio. Well, I was meeting students and I was like, wow, we have so much in common. It's a bummer we have to go be in that room and be quiet. And so I turned that on its head. I walk in the room and say, go meet your neighbor. Go meet someone you don't know. Sit down, look them in the eyes and talk about blank. And I'd give them a topic. And then if I had to, I would drag someone's ass off the mat, cross the room and sit them with someone. And we'd spend 10 minutes doing community time.
Right.
Play some music. I go, don't worry, the fucking workout's coming.
Right.
When the yoga happens, you're going to wish you were talking again. So go have fun and enjoy meeting another human who you're probably neighbors. You probably eat the same way, spend your money the same way.
Yeah.
And so that was the first thing that really just started to break the dogma of the yoga studio, And then we stripped away the Sanskrit. It was said at a time that speaking Sanskrit was a holy language. It raised the vibration of the person chanting it. Well, sure, unless you don't understand the words the teacher are saying,
right,
then it lowers your vibration pretty fucking fast because you feel dumb.
Yeah.
Urdhva Mukha Svanasana.
Yeah.
You say up dog.
Yeah, it's always sounded fucking pretentious to me when they do that. It's like, okay, you're saying some hocus pocus secret language. I don't give a shit.
Your psyche pushes back.
Yeah.
And there was so much in the practice that I found distinctly the Western mind and the beginner student mind pushed back from. That we were pushing people out of the practice. We were giving them a free week, which was great to get them into the practice, and then we were alienating them,
Right.
making them feel alone and awkward in the studio, making them feel dumb with the language we were speaking. And so I stripped all that away. All I try to do as a teacher is learn cool shit from wherever and whoever, strip away what you don't need, and condense what you do, and then put it into a practice. And so what I was doing was leading a workout that no one had ever experienced before. Really hard. And then I would slip the philosophy in subconsciously. Underneath that, I'd put it in a way that was very palatable, very accessible for the student. And people would go out beaming. And then the other thing I do is I stand at the door and say, hey, good job as you leave. High five, hug, slap you on the butt. If it's a guy, I can tell he's a jock and coach used to slap him on the ass. I'd walk by. Can't get away with this shit now.
No, I was going to say.
Adam Janicer, a buddy of mine, now owns 7 yoga studios in the Midwest. I helped him open half of them. I walk up his first class with me, and we're in Utkatasana, a squat. See, why can't you just say squat?
Right.
We're in a deep squat, or supposed to be. Well, Adam Janicer is in a very quarter squat, very mild squat.
Right.
And I walk up and I slap him on the ass and I say, sink your ass deeper, Janicer.
Yes, coach.
And he's used to football.
Right.
His eyes go wide, his ass sinks deep, and he's hooked.
Yeah.
And all we do as teachers, right, is cut a facet on the opaque stone of human consciousness. We all say the same thing. Be nice to each other. Do unto each other as you do unto yourself. And we say it differently. So that you cut a facet here, I cut a facet there, and every other voice that says it in their own way, pretty soon it turns an opaque stone into a brilliant one. It lets the light in, And I think it was just people in Denver were hungry for that kind of raw authenticity. And I think what it did for people was inspire them not to try and be like me, but to see, wow, here's a guy being himself.
Right.
I have a little more courage to go be myself now.
Right.
And
ultimately, isn't that what it always comes down to, is authenticity?
Yeah.
Like in podcasting too, I find like those, I want to hear a conversation between two real people, which is one of the reasons I don't like having famous people on the podcast necessarily. If they're famous, they're on despite the fact that they're famous.
They're locked into a persona already.
I don't want to hear your canned answers and your canned narratives and, it's got to be organic, Like, I didn't know we were going to be talking about this. I'm sure, I know you've got the high points of your life or the, narrative threads, but to me, authenticity comes out in a lack of preparedness, at least conversationally.
See, that's why I thought we were going to get stoned and do the podcast last night.
Well, we would have, except people were cooking food and playing music.
It'd be very
to shut down the whole party.
Very different recording.
Yeah, I don't want to do that. But that, I've had a weird relationship. I've studied yoga, if that's the word, practiced yoga, whatever, in probably 15 different cities around the world that I've lived in, and I never stayed anywhere long enough to really pursue it. I'd be off somewhere else, and I'm not very disciplined about doing things regularly. And but I've always rebelled against this thing you're talking about. I led a full fucking mutiny in a yoga class against the teacher because he was such a douchebag, such an arrogant fucking douchebag. This was in India, and he was like shaming people. I didn't tell you to do. You wait until I tell you, and just like, oh, dude, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, I'm here to relax and feel good, and
very militaristic.
And so authoritarian.
Public school model of yoga teaching.
Ego. All this ego.
And then they used to also practice while they taught. So do like me, and they'd bend and do all the postures, and then say, well, you can't do it, right?
Yeah.
I had this teacher named Bill Stow back in high school. He's still one of my best friends to this day. He was my freshman and my senior English teacher. got me into reading, writing, and he had this way about him as a teacher that he could let control go and then get it back. Brilliant at circling back to a topic. He had this thing, if you would get up in the front of the class and sing a song from start to finish, you get an A for the semester. And if not, then shut the fuck up.
Really?
You know? One person ever did it in his 40-year teaching tenure, right? But I remember I actually went, I said, hey, Stout, can we sit down? I want to pick your brain about teaching. Because I remembered this methodless method where you could let people be in control, because people love to learn. They don't like to be taught. Overtly teaching at someone is icky.
Right.
I call it. I keep things simple.
Yeah.
Icky, not icky. Is this touch icky or not icky? I teach our trainees, our teacher trainees. Well, if it's icky, it's change something. Same with those outdated public school driven teaching models, which is I talk, you shut up and listen. Right. So how do we give control back, but feel okay about that? And I think 99% of most teachers out there, they're probably poorly equipped at being able to be okay with letting some of the control go.
Right.
So instead they do what I'm doing now, is they start talking and they don't stop.
Yeah. Well, that's what you're here for. That's what we're paying you for, man. Yeah. I remember a quote I read a long time ago, which was that a good teacher is not concerned with transmitting knowledge. A good teacher creates an environment in which learning can occur. Yeah. It's just like you just create an atmosphere where learning is cool and encouraged, and the tools are available, but students have to pick them up.
You create a space for that to happen in, for exploration to happen in, which is going to lead to mistakes. And those mistakes can lead to shame, or they can lead to empowerment.
Yeah.
And it's a razor sharp line, and not many people can really walk it.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of the things we bring to the table at Outlaw Yoga is give you space to make a connection, empower you to be bold, and then we implore you that we just practiced on the mat, but if yoga stops here, man, you're fucked. You got to take your yoga out, because I don't care how you can do Warrior 2. I care, are you more patient with your mom on the phone?
Right.
Are you a bigger, better human because of this practice we did here?
Right.
We can make six packs and nice butts in a number of ways. But yoga can be such an effective delivery system for a set of values. Simple ones like honesty and discipline, hardworking motivation from within, patience and understanding and acceptance can all flow from this practice. And if it doesn't, then you're delivering the practice in a suboptimal way.
Right.
And
I think a lot about how in the West we have an oppositional relationship with our bodies, right? You got no pain, no gain. You gotta fight through it. You gotta, Joe Rogan likes to talk about taming his inner bitch. And, I think I don't have an inner bitch. Like I have an inner, an inner beautiful, wonderful,
I'm trying to picture Joe Rogan's inner bitch right now. It's a scary bitch.
Scary. But I mean, this whole this is one of the things that Joe and I disagree about every time we talk, probably, is he's got this vision of the world as being this very dangerous, brutal place, and you've got to be strong, and you got to fight it, and you got to tame it, and you got to do. And I see that as a very Western colonial kind of domination, Old Testament approach to life. I'm much more Aikido, much more, and yoga, I think, as it's taught the way you're describing it, which is you're not here to beat your body into submission. You're here to release your body and be kind to your body. And then that emanates out into the rest of your life, where you're kinder to your mother and you're more patient with, the kids and whatever, because you're developing this sort of congruent relationship with your life rather than an oppositional relationship with your life. But it seems interesting to me, your transition from being angry the super angry young man getting into fights on the basketball court, then sort of turning into like making that professional and channeling that in the cage fighting, to what you're describing in yoga is like a real 180 degree pivot within yourself.
And it certainly felt like that at the time. And it's interesting to bring up those two philosophies about the world around us, because I would agree with both of you that the world is a dangerous place that you need to be prepared for. It's also a lovely existence full of beauty that you're better off flowing with, right? And yoga is meant to prepare you and to stress test you in a way that it's almost like softening the mind with the difficult effort, so that then you're ready to accept some softer ideas. One of the blessings I had as a teacher is I had been a fighter. I could walk in and feel no qualms in my being about being a big guy talking about peace and love, painted toenails, and just being nice to everybody, because I'd been there and done that. And I think if you don't ever experience that, then you have this little notion that you're unproven, maybe. But the other thing that I think I drop in there is that sometimes our relationship to our ego is what we're really talking about, right? Is one of opposition. We think that ego is there as our enemy, but when the ego is there as an ally, as a beloved child in the room, who when it's crying, it's just trying to get your attention half the time. When you can come to that place, then I think there's more to learn from that relationship, or potentially can be. Why is it that you're crying right now, mini me?
Right.
What is it that you're threatened by right now? Interesting.
See, that's why I really respect Aikido as a, and it's kind of like what you were saying, all teachers are teaching the same thing, right? I feel like all martial arts are essentially teaching the same thing. But I love the way Aikido is like, you need this space, whatever your ego, the person you're interacting with, they need to declare themselves as a tough guy, right? So rather than saying you're not that tough, you say, man, you're a tough dude. You give them that, right? So in physically, I guess it's the sword coming down, and you don't have a sword, so you don't try to block the sword. You step out of the way of the sword, and then you use that movement, right? And I find that is so applicable to all interaction with other people. When you learn to recognize, like, I see what you need. You need that line right there. I'll just step out of the way and let you have it.
Let's
I don't
channel
need to
this.
block it.
Let's not resist this or fight against it. Let's channel it. Wait, you're here now. It'd be nice as a human if you could get from A to B. Let's close that winnable gap by helping the flow. And
I'm not helping you by blocking that flow.
Or fighting it.
Exactly. So I get out of the way and encourage you down that path rather than trying to redirect you.
And now it's an unexpected response to the other person's ego.
Right.
They're used to resistance. They're used to fighting. When you say, hey man, I don't want any trouble, there's a disconnect in that mind. And in that gap, you can place patience, forgiveness, acceptance.
Yeah.
That's that non-reactive moment.
Right.
Where the Satori, the small enlightenment that the Buddhists would call, right? There's this flash of no thinking, because it's an unusual response to a learned behavior. And you expect a typical response, and now this happens. And in that moment, mini enlightenment happens.
Yeah.
And maybe a change.
Yeah.
And if you do enough of them, then maybe a lot of change.
Yeah. Justin, I could talk with you all fucking day, but it's occurring to me that we got to get out of the other Justin's house.
We both have vans that need a motor down the road.
Yeah, we got places to go, but I hope we can continue this conversation.
Let's continue this.
Because I feel like we've barely
scratched the surface.
Talk about your books, and do you have a website or something? Like, where can people learn about you?
For an outlaw, I'm shockingly easy to find online. You can look up Outlaw Yoga, Outlaw Yogi, on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. JustinKALISZEWSKI.com. It's spelled just the way it sounds.
It was coming.
You mentioned dabbling in yoga in different cities, so I would be remiss if I didn't mention our online Outlaw Yoga offering. OutlawYogaClub.com.
Right.
Go to OutlawYogaClub.com. It's $9 a month for, I think, some of the best yoga that's out there. 5-minute practices to hour-and-a-half practices to accommodate any lifestyle. I teach practices. I want to meet you where you're at. Right. If you're in an office, you don't want to get sweaty. You can't take 90 minutes at lunch to drive to a studio, do 60 minutes, drive back. Here's a 10-minute practice you can do at your desk. You'll look funny to your colleagues, but you'll feel better afterwards.
Oh, cool.
And I put a lot of the same tools on YouTube. So I make our yoga tool-based. If it's not going to serve you immediately, then I put it in the back seat. So it's embedded. The philosophy, the physicality. Do this, listeners. Do this one yoga. Replace the words "I don't know" with "I wonder" for the next 48 hours. Anytime you're tempted to say "I don't know," because "I don't know" is an answer.
Right. And it's stops, a permanent state.
And it comes with a period, and it stops inquiry.
Yeah.
Hey, what are you going to do today? I don't know. What are you going to do today? I wonder. It comes with an ellipsis, dot at the end of it, and it opens possibility. And that's kind of one of the little philosophical tools that I will drop into our practice.
Right.
So we can get stronger physically and mentally.
Nice. Anya and I have been talking about, we're going to be traveling for the next year, and there are downsides to that. And one of them is both of us are like, fuck, I want to get into a regular yoga practice. Especially me, I'm getting stiff and old and, so yeah, something to like sort of keep some flexibility and not get as old as quickly.
When you're in the driver's seat for a long time, and you get out of it, and you're in the van, so maybe you don't have a shower. Yeah. So a lot of things that go against you staying in good shape on the road. But I think
so. I will sign up for that. That's good. And your books. You gave me 2 books. I haven't really looked at them. I know one's a novel and one's a book about yoga.
The yoga book is called The Outlaw Protocol. Okay. How to live as an outlaw without becoming a criminal.
Do you know Bob Dylan's line about outlaw?
No.
It's in one of his songs. He says, I forget which song it is, but he says, if you're going to be an outlaw, you have to be honest.
Yeah, you do. You have to walk a tighter line.
Yeah.
If you're going to walk outside the line.
Because you don't have the support of normalcy.
It takes more discipline.
So you better keep your shit real clean. I think about that with relationships. If you're in any kind of unconventional relationship structure, you got to like really have your shit cleared up or it gets messy real fast.
Yep.
Right? Because everyone knows how a normal relationship works or doesn't. But you're doing this, like you're doing what? Right. You got 4 people involved in this thing. Everybody better keep
if you're setting the line, you got to walk the line.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that's what that book is about. It's half storybook, stories from my past. Styles in there, Jose's in there.
Oh, really? So it's sort of a memoir.
It's sort of a memoir. And then it's interspersed with journal sections. So you can take the lesson I learned and how do we apply this? Does this apply to your life? And it leaves you room to engage the book itself. So it's half workbook, half storybook.
Oh, interesting.
And it's available on audiobook, wherever audiobooks are sold.
Did you read it?
I did.
Good.
My little brother engineered it.
Nice.
We did it we homemade an audio booth in his apartment in Koreatown, Los Angeles.
Nice.
Yeah. And so there's an audiobook. I don't know if there's a Kindle book for that. And there's a paperback you can find at outlawyoga.com/shop. That's outlawyoga.com/shop.
Yeah.
And then living in Koreatown inspired The Adventures of Larry Wampler, The Case of the Koreatown Car Jumper. Mm-hmm. The novel that's out, it's book 7 in a 12-book series. 4 written, I'm releasing them Star Wars style, so book 7 came out first. Koreatown.
Star Wars style.
When a person is throwing themselves in front of the cars and shaking them down for cash bribes in Koreatown, right, in the plot. Right. He accidentally, unknowingly throws himself in front of the mob boss's wife one week and the mob boss's daughter the next. So, of course, the mob boss calls in Larry Wampler to crack the case quietly.
Right.
to hilarious consequences.
Of course.
That's the novel.
How the fuck do you find time to do all this shit?
You know, my mind races. That's why I smoke a lot of weed at night to shut it down. But I try to crank. You know, I what I do creatively, my flow is I get a lot of stuff set up at once so that knowing my mind's tendency to be distracted, I can distract it with something that's productive.
Right.
And so I got into painting because I was avoiding writing.
Right.
And if you avoid it enough, you get good at painting.
Right.
Right. And so I picked the guitar back up to avoid painting.
Right.
You know, and if I can just keep a canvas there and a file or 10 open on the laptop and a guitar hanging there, or a building project, then I can move from one to the next, and I can chip away at projects and be distracted and not fight the flow.
Right.
But no, I do have more projects maybe than I have time in life to finish. But 4 of these Wamplers are done. Book 1, 2, and 3 are done. Book 7 is out, and I'm going to finish book 8 tonight. Tonight. I have 10 pages left to write in The Adventures of Calvin Wampler, The Case of the Coconut Killer.
Is Calvin the son of...
Calvin is the half-brother.
Oh, half-brother.
Of Larry Wampler. Next time we'll talk about my 2 half-sisters. That'll be a funny conversation.
Right, and your bulldogs. There was a lot going on.
Frenchies.
We haven't even mentioned the dogs out
Thank
in the
you
van.
for bringing... Look up Gonzo Bulldog on Instagram. You guys
Gonzo Bulldog. Apparently Gonzo Bulldog is famous.
He's famous.
In some quarters.
In certain
towns.
Whitefish, Montana.
Yeah.
Littleton, Colorado. Gonzo is Portland, Oregon.
Yeah.
Loves Gonzo Bulldog.
Gonzo Bulldog on Instagram. All right, cool. Thank you, dude.
And I want to talk
awesome.
next time we talk. I want to remember to talk more about butts and urethras, and eventually sex. We should talk about sex.
Yeah, we could talk
It'd
about
be a lot of fun.
I'm kind of tired of talking about. It's funny. I mean, it's that line, like, find something you love and make it your work.
It's your work.
It's like, well, that doesn't always work out. It's like you could drain the fun out of it.
It invites a drudgery.
Yeah.
To
yeah. It. I mean, I don't know. I'm kidding. Man. I'm not tired.
Yeah. My heart bleeds for you, brother.
Yeah. I'll never get tired of talking about sex, but there are moments where I'm like, how did I become a world-renowned expert in gorilla testicles? Like, how the fuck did that happen?
I'll never forget 2 things from your book. The gorilla has the smallest penis per pound of all primates, and that tribe you mentioned that on the night of marriage, every male in the village has sex with the female, so that no one knows the origination of the father, so everyone
partible
like the
paternity. Where different. I mean, you're conflating 2 different things there. There is a tribe where the night of the marriage, the men from the village all have sex with the woman, and interestingly, the older woman will tell her all about how you never, don't get jealous, and sex isn't the same as love, and there's this whole sort of training around understanding how to operate in that. But then the other thing you're talking about is partible paternity, which happens in lots of different tribes in the Amazon and elsewhere in the world too, where they believe that the fetus is composed of accumulated semen, and so the woman wants to have like the kid that's a good hunter and funny and
wants
strong.
as much of it as possible.
So she'll fuck the funny dude and the good hunter dude and the strong dude and the kind dude. She wants to get this energy from all these different men into her child, and then all those guys will consider themselves fathers because they all contributed. And there's even in one tribe, I remember coming across this paper that. And it's a funny thing when you research this sort of stuff, because the anthropologists are just science. They're not laughing.
The male inserts the penis an average of 73 times.
Right. It's all stats. But there was one paper where the anthropologist said, they even in this tribe there's a word for the one who inserts it. the semen. And then there's the one who mixes it around, and the one who, pulls it out.
The icing on top.
We call it sloppy seconds. Yeah.
The only sex training I had was from Mrs. Schneider in 7th grade, and she said to use a condom, and it was so fucking uncomfortable. I had no idea what to do. The first time I masturbated, I used conditioner. If you take nothing from this, don't use conditioner as a lubricant.
That's the takeaway.
Masturbating.
Mayonnaise.
It stings.
Mayonnaise is where it's at.
Mayonnaise.
Yeah, this first time, I don't know if I've told this story, and probably shouldn't, but I couldn't figure out how to masturbate because I saw all these guys making the movement, but I was circumcised, and just doing that hurt, and it didn't occur to me to use lube. And then one day I was reading a National Lampoon, and there was a story about a guy using mayonnaise, and I was like, man, what? It changed my life.
Lesson 2: do not get your sexual lessons from National Lampoon.
Oh no, that was a good one.
Do you still use mayonnaise?
Fucking egg salad sandwich gives me a boner every time.
Jesus Christ.
Just kidding. We're gonna edit.
What a great place! No, you got to keep that. What a great place to say goodbye.
All right, goodbye, everybody. Now that you've heard more than you wanted to, you got more than you bargained for. Justin, whatever the fuck your last name is, thank you, man.
KALISZEWSKI.
I got it. All right, cool.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right, thanks for listening, folks.
Yeah, thanks. Especially if you made it to the end.
Yeah, if you put up with all that shit.
Made it this
we started with hemorrhoids and we ended with jerking off.
If you made it this far, here's a free month code to the Outlaw Yoga Club. Put in the code Outlaw Month at checkout. We'll know how many people made it to the end because I'll get 3 uses of the code.
Nice.
Outlaw Month is a free month at outlawyogaclub.com.
Outlaw Month. All right. Thanks for listening, y'all.
Enjoy. Thank you.